How many of you recycle your plastic? Have you ever noticed those little numbers on the bottom and wondered what they're all about? And most people think that those little numbers will make it so all your plastic gets recycled. Well, it doesn't. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Most plastic does not get recycled. And it ends up getting thrown away, landfilled, and sometimes ends up in our oceans. If we throw plastic into our oceans, they could be unsustainable, and that could lead to an unsustainable planet. If we create a sustainable business model, that would create a value for this unwanted junk plastic, and that would stop the flow of plastic into the oceans because it would be too expensive. What's the problem with plastic anyway? Can anybody remember this? Anybody old enough to remember the 60s? Plastic seemed like an easy, cheap answer to all of our dreams. It was almost like a genie gave us our wish of a durable, inexpensive plastic that we could throw away. But that wasn't sustainable. What if we get that genie right now to get rid of all the plastic in the ocean and on Earth? And you'd say, yeah, let's do it. That'd be so simple. We could just get rid of it. But that would mean your phone wouldn't work, the internet wouldn't work, and pretty soon, after a few hours, a lot of people would be getting hungry, and they'd be probably begging that genie to give them their plastic back so they could have something to eat. Screw the ocean. I want something to eat. We are dependent on plastic. A single plastic bag is about the thickness of a human hair. It only costs a penny, and it seals in freshness and seals out bacteria, and it greatly increases the shelf life of our food. Plastic is really, really cheap because it's made from fossil fuels. Actually, polyethylene is mainly made from natural gas. And since it's so cheap, it's really difficult to compete with or recycle it because the virgin plastic feedstock is so inexpensive. 90% of used plastic is dirty plastic. And this dirty plastic is worthless and usually too expensive to recycle. It would just cost too much, more than it's worth. It's usually full of all kinds of dirt and grime. And if you could get it clean, the other problem with it is that it's commingled with millions of other kinds of, or thousands of other kinds of plastics that can't nowadays be combined. They have to be separated out. And with plastics, there's so many different kinds. Only about 10% of the plastic is recycled, and that's mainly like two examples are milk bottles, milk jugs, and water bottles, because these are two distinct types of plastic, and they're easily cleaned, and they can be combined together. So they have value. Aluminum cans also have value because they're all the same stuff. They aren't plastic, but they're all the same stuff. And you don't see any aluminum cans around because it has a value. The other 90% of the junk plastic gets thrown away. And that can be a problem. 8 million tons of plastic, of this thrown away plastic in the world, finds its way into the ocean. 8 million tons. 1 ton is like a small car. Plastic breaks down into very small, tiny little bits, and it's almost on a microscopic level. Now you can see the different areas. There's concentrations of them, of the plastic there, but it's everywhere. It's in the Antarctic, in the tropics, everywhere. And this is really like a smog because the pieces are so small. Most people think of a gyre as like a garbage patch, but it's really more like a smog. And it's made up of these tiny little bits. And they're much smaller than the ones you see here. They're on a microscopic level. And it's in the food chain, which means it's in our cells. So it's not out in the ocean, it's in our bodies. With certain plastics, even parts per trillion can get into our bodies and have the same effects as female hormones. Fun, huh? Cleaning up this plastic in our oceans is about as profitable and difficult as trying to clean up all the particles of smog in the air once it's out. LA cleaned up its smog problem by going after and cutting off the source of the smog in cars and other polluters. It's 1,000 times easier to stop the flow of plastic or smog before it goes into the atmosphere or the ocean than to deal with it once it's in the ocean. The plastic in the ocean, unlike the smog, doesn't get washed out with the rain. First, I have a confession to make. Personally, I have put millions of pounds of plastic into the ocean. I've been responsible for that. And worse yet, it's been along some of the most pristine coastlines in the world. It was in the form of sit-on-top kayaks. I started the company Ocean Kayak, and we used to sell 200 to 300 of these a day. My motto was, 1 billion butts in boats in clean water. And I sold the company about 20 years ago. This made a lot of people really intimate with this watery environment. And they started doing beach cleanups. And about this time, plastic was discovered in large quantities in our oceans. If somebody could possibly break one of my kayaks, I would pay for the shipping of the pieces back, and then I'd recycle it because it was one type of plastic that I could do that. Although they were really tough. They came off on freeways and without getting damaged at all. But I found that was really good for business. Yvon Chouinard said, you should protect, people in the outdoor industry should protect the outdoors, otherwise they won't have a place to sell their goods. When I started out, I really didn't know what I was doing. I guess I had a little grit because I made so many mistakes. But I had a lot of help from friends like Elmer Good here, and he was my mentor. And he had a plastic that was really, really incredibly tough, but it was unrecyclable. So he having a little bit of grit himself, he came up with a really elegant solution. He ground it up into bits and then put it into this Cuisinart or food blender type machine that made the pieces all hot, and then he put it into an aluminum mold and molded it. And he molded parts out of it. I call this process thermokinetic compounding. I kind of coined that word. What Elmer also found out was this process could use dissimilar plastics. So you could commingle plastics and this was the first time this ever happened. It was really amazing. You can see all the little bits of different stuff in there. What really made this awesome was that he could use dirty plastic. He could pour oil in there. He could have, because he didn't want to clean the plastic, he said, let's just start with the dirty stuff. And then that worked so well, he ground up other types of trash, like ground up tires. And somebody dared him to put tumbleweeds into the plastic. And that actually made it a little bit stiffer. So they could add up to 50% of this stuff in there, of this extra filler. And it worked just fine with no problems. This would ruin most conventional plastic recycling machines because they have to use really, really clean stuff. A little bit of sand or something would just ruin them. The TKC process is like a giant 300 horsepower food blender that uses friction to kinetically heat up all these little pieces, and in about 10 seconds, it whips up a 10-pound blob. It's like a loaf of bread dough, and this is a hot plastic thing. It stays warm for quite a while, and then that's put into a low-cost aluminum mold, and then that's put in with a lot of pressure, and then they're stamped out, and then in a few minutes, the part comes out, and it's a beautiful part. And these parts can be anywhere from the size of your fist to 4 by 8, which is a big piece. So you could actually make a house with this stuff. And it can have like a waffle pattern for strength, and that's actually really big for even, there's very few processes that will make that even with virgin plastic. Today, virgin plastic, like polyethylene, even in China, the feedstock costs about $1 a pound. Well, with this process, since the feedstock costs nothing, it almost has negative value because it costs to throw it away, we can make things cheaper than we can in China. And the big bonus is that there's no shipping. And shipping is a terribly awful, it takes a lot of time, and it's a very, very dirty business to be in. And this would create jobs right here in the US or anywhere in the world. But here's the key. If there's suddenly a demand for this feedstock that had negative value, and that could get up to like even 20 cents, all of a sudden that would be like not picking this stuff up would be like throwing money away. So all the rivers where a lot of plastic goes out rivers in different countries and other places, that would all get cleaned up because it would have value, especially in developing nations. Now, I come from Bellingham. I'm originally from California, but I come from Bellingham, Washington, which is about the exact same size as Santa Cruz. A lot of similarities. And this community in Bellingham both create about 1 million pounds of this dirty, dissimilar plastic. And that could turn into millions of dollars worth of plastic molded products made right here without any shipping. And the nice thing about it is that the factory would only cost about $1 million or under $1 million to put together. So it's a high return on investment. Now, the other thing about this, on a world level, if you put this out to a world level, this could be a $100 billion industry. And the interesting thing about it is we probably have more trash over here than we do in China. So we actually have more feedstock than they do over there. So it's a perfect thing for all our things. Somebody actually said that it would be possible to someday mine landfills. Designs for these upcycled products, while the manufacturer could be local, very localized, eliminating shipping, the design could be a crowdsourced global endeavor, where if somebody wants something done and made in Australia, the design could come from somewhere like Switzerland. And all the CAD files could be just shipped via email instead of by shipping products by ship. So you get exactly what you want in that area. And having great design adds more value, and you get more money for the products because it does more. The TKC technology is proven, safe, environmentally friendly, and available, but we aren't using it yet. What about making solar roof tiles out of this stuff? It would be perfect because it doesn't matter that they don't have to be completely lightweight. Sidewalks would be an excellent thing. They have made them out of feed bags. It's agricultural feed bags because they can get the white color. But these sidewalks are great because they don't break when the trees' roots grow under them. And what's really amazing about this is that cement is really cheap, but a ton of cement creates a ton of CO2. Now you can just imagine, just in one city block like out in front of the theater here, that how many tons that one city block of sidewalk would be, and that's how many tons of CO2 it produced making that. I have no affiliation with any of the companies produce in any of these products. But I still know Elmer Good. Unfortunately, he had a stroke a few years ago, and he can't talk. But it's always been his wish to have the TKC process make the earth a better place. I also have a story about a guy that died and went to heaven. And when he was talking to St. Peter up there, and he was telling St. Peter, this is a terrible thing that's going on down there. There's all this plastic in the ocean. And haven't you sent somebody down, or can't you send somebody down there to figure this stuff out? And St. Peter says, yeah, we did. It was you. The genie first gave us the gift of plastic. The second gift could be to reuse this plastic over and over again and never throw it into the ocean. And that's the nice thing about TKC process, is that you can recycle this product. That's what the ocean should look like. Recycle everything over and over again. And the third gift could be to come up with a solution, once we stop the flow of plastic, to get the plastic out of the oceans. Face it, we won't and can't stop using plastic. But if we create molded products, we can make this junk plastic worth something, so we can't afford to throw it away, and especially into our oceans. We could create a sustainable business model which would result in a sustainable ocean and earth. Is anybody interested in stopping the flow of plastic into our oceans and doing that profitably? Thank you very much.